I want to try to figure this out intuitively first, because if you can do that, it's better. So let's talk about this. It's only 2 sentences. The first one says that these students will achieve broad mastery if they are taught with the methods appropriate to their learning styles and they devote significant effort. Bottom line, this is an if-then statement that has 2 conditions, right? If you devote significant effort, let's simplify that. What's the simplification?
Mastery and time.
Mastery and time?
Methods and time.
Methods and time, or I mean, they talk about significant effort, right? I would say work hard. So as long as you work hard and you're taught well, then you will master the subject matter, right? Now, does this make sense? You feel like this has some basis in reality? It doesn't matter on the LSAT, but it can it can be helpful in terms of.
I thought that was funny because you were saying it doesn't matter in the LSAT as if you don't work hard. If you work hard and you're taught well, you still may not do well.
Yes,
LSAT.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, well, that could be true. I was just thinking, if you understand it intuitively, then it can be, that allows us to sort of deal with the information better, right? And so I feel like this is somewhat intuitive. Yeah, if you work hard and you're taught well, then you will master. That's a little extreme, right? There are certainly people who work hard and are taught well, but don't master something. But me and basketball, for example. But anyway, so thus, if such broad mastery is not achieved, then what must have happened? If broad mastery was not achieved, what can we conclude? MJ?
One of the conditions wasn't present.
Yeah, at least one or both, but at least one of them wasn't present, right? Because it was basically, hey, look, if you were taught well and if you worked hard, let's see, they said devoted effort, then you would have achieved mastery. And then this is saying, oh, so if you didn't achieve mastery, we'd want to say you must not have done one of those things. But instead, they go a little too far and they say, oh, you must not have been taught well. You weren't taught well. So what's the gap here? What's this person assuming? MJ?
That significant effort was devoted?
Yeah, that people gave significant effort. If you assume that everyone was actually working hard or devoting effort, then if someone didn't achieve broad mastery, then they must not have been taught well. That's the only way that could have occurred. So this would be my prediction. This is not the answer that they gave us, but they did give it to us in an indirect way. So answer choice A says, as long as is an if indicator. Shane, does that sound good? Let's see, Logan, if indicator?
Yeah, that's okay.
Okay, that's okay. So it is, which means if you are taught with appropriate methods, then you will devote significant effort. So if you're taught well, then you will devote effort. Why does this effectively prove this? Why does it prove that if you didn't master, then you must have not been taught well?
Because if you were taught well, then you would have, if you were using that, if you were taught well, you would have fulfilled the sufficient conditions.
If you had been taught well, then you would have devoted significant effort, and there's no way that this could have come about.
Yeah.
So you must not have been taught well. Another way to think about this is the contrapositive is if you don't devote significant effort, right, then you were not taught well. And so what the real outcome here is if you don't achieve broad mastery, then at least one of those things must not have happened. And what this is saying is, well, either you weren't taught well, which is one option, or you didn't devote significant effort, which by the way means you weren't taught well. So no matter what, you weren't taught well. So this is kind of a clever answer choice, but it achieves the job. Other answers that we were debating here? C. Secondary students do not achieve broad mastery of the curriculum if they are not taught with methods appropriate to their learning style.
Oh, I got the double negative in mind.
Yeah, this is if not taught well, then not mastery. That sounds like the false contrapositive of this. That's what answer choice C is doing, right? If they're not taught well, than not mastery. Which unfortunately doesn't help us. It is something new, as we're adding it to the argument, but it doesn't prove the conclusion. Okay. Any other questions on this one, Garrett? B? Even if secondary students are taught with methods appropriate to the learning style, they will not achieve broad mastery of the curriculum if they do not devote significant efforts to their studies. Okay, let's see here. What is this saying? It's really saying that if they don't devote significant efforts, so if they don't do this, then they will not achieve broad mastery. Okay.
You have to do that with the taught well to get to mastery was kind of the way I thought about it.
Well, okay, so unfortunately, what we're saying is if they didn't achieve mastery, right, then this must have occurred. And this is saying if they don't devote significant effort, then they didn't achieve mastery, but it doesn't tell me what happens when they don't achieve mastery. So like I can't go backwards and say, oh, I can't say anything about devoted effort or not devoting effort. So that kind of leaves this question unanswered.
Okay.
So I think it's kind of like C in the sense it's a false contrapositive. Going in the wrong direction, it's not really going to help us in this circumstance. Yes?
So answer choice A is correct because it addresses both of those sufficient conditions.
It addresses both of the necessary conditions. In other words, another way of thinking about this is that the contrapositive of this is if not M, then not TW or not D, right? And what this conclusion is doing is let's get rid of this for half a second. This conclusion is saying, oh, if you don't achieve broad mastery, then it must have been this. And so we need to get rid of this possibility. Or the possibility that instead of not being taught well, you were actually just not devoted. And what answer choice A does is it says, hey, if you weren't devoted, then you also weren't taught well. So either outcome is going to ultimately lead to this. So it must be true that if you didn't achieve broad mastery, then you weren't taught well. Does that make sense or no?
Kind of. I mean, with sufficient assumption questions, it needs to solve all the problems in the argument.
Yeah, it needs to prove this.
Prove that.
Yeah, and solve the problems and thus make this true. And this has to be true if this is true and this is true. Because what this is saying is under this circumstance, you're going to have two outcomes, right? And one of them is exactly what we want. The other one is not what we want because it's not here. But what this answer choice A does is says, well, no, if you get that, you're still going to end up with this. So no matter what, you're going to get here.
Okay.
So yes, this does lead to this. It will either lead to it directly or it will lead to it indirectly through this and that. The bottom line is no matter what, this is going to happen. So let's prove it. That's the ultimate goal. Just make sure the conclusion is true. Yes?
So E is a false contrapositive of what we want.
Let's see. Students who devote effort do not... Oh, actually, that's not even an if-then statement. Because when it says not always, it becomes sometimes don't. And I would just say, okay, now we don't care about this answer choice because it has sometimes they do and sometimes they don't.
Yeah.
Okay. Any other questions on this one? All right.